Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited for this webinar and the two amazing guests that we have on with me today. As you know, there are so many different ways for an advisor to grow their business, so many different methods for finding and attracting new prospects. But one of the most proven methods for doing that is seminars. Even to this day, there is probably no better way to get yourself directly in front of a whole room of interested and qualified people that you can potentially do business with. And so today we're going to be talking about how to tweak seminars to really make them as effective as possible. And we're joined by two amazing guests who I can't think of anyone better to talk about seminars and how to master them. We have one man who literally wrote the book on effective seminar marketing, and another who took that book, applied it, mastered it, and advanced it to a whole nother level. So I want to introduce both of them to you today. First, of course, we have none other than Bill Good himself, who is the founder of Bill Good Marketing. I'm going to let Bill actually introduce himself and talk to you a little about his background and who he is and the company that he founded. So Bill, please tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
All right. I started the company that became Bill Good Marketing in 1977. Beginning in 1980, I slid into the financial services business. And from about 1980 to 1986, I personally did about 1,000 seminars. So seminars is something I have great personal knowledge about. I know what I'm talking about. In 1986, I created what we now call the Bill Good Marketing System, immodestly named after me. And that is a complete system to help you manage and grow a business. One of the components of that, and we actually have, I think it's 9 different channels to bring in new assets, is seminars. And some of the very top producers in this industry cut their teeth on this seminar model. And you're going to learn some things about seminars today that it's not well known how profitable these things are if you do it right. So that's my job. And one other thing about, I guess in 2018, 4 years ago, or however many years, 6 years ago, I had a conversation with Neil's dad, Neil McPeak Jr., who's been a client since 1991. And we talked about young Neil McPeak, who at the time was a Wharton-educated spreadsheet geek. Is that a fair statement, Neil?
Very fair, Bill.
And I told Neil he needs to be a rainmaker. So I worked out an arrangement to take Neil on as a personal coaching client in 2018. And as you will see, he made a lot of mistakes. We corrected those mistakes and produced the person some of you want to be. So that's a little bit about who I am.
The person I think most of us want to be, Bill, and that's a great segue into introducing Neil. Neil, it's so good to have you on a webinar. You're someone I've gotten to know, quite a bit more in the past, 6-7 months, and I'm really thrilled you're joining us today. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and your practice as well, so we can get a better idea of who you are as a financial advisor.
Sure. No, and Matt and Bill, thanks for having me on the webinar here. A little bit of background about our team. My dad started the group back in 1981. Originally was Prudential or Wachovia Securities, then became Prudential. It was Prudential, then Wachovia, and then Wachovia then in 2008 became Wells Fargo. Just in the past 2 months, we moved to the independent division within Wells Fargo. So we're now Wells Fargo Finet. So that's been a great move for us. We've really enjoyed the independence and the slight step away from the broker-dealer. But our focus is on financial planning. So we have 4 certified financial planners on staff. We focus on working with high net worth individuals. That includes retirees, endowments, foundations, other institutions. But our focus over the past year or so has been a lot on business owners. So we've kind of developed a little bit more of a niche on working with business owners pre-sale, and then, setting them up and giving them confidence for the business sale itself. We started back in seminars back in 2016. I made a lot of mistakes for 2 years, have a lot of horror stories of how tough and challenging seminars were. And then in 2018, we fully engaged with Bill. I basically gave up on trying to reinvent the seminar process and kind of started to follow Bill's guidance. And step by step, kind of seminar by seminar, we dialed in our own process and not perfected, but really improved the process that we used to bring in some accounts over the last couple of years. So it's been a really fun. I mean, the seminars have been a lot of fun. It's been some of the most fun we've had in the business. I work with two really talented people in Claire Carberry and Kyle Rafina, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about them on the seminar. They're integral to the seminar process. So we have really a seminar team. It's not just myself. It's three people who dive in and really deliver on the seminars for prospects and clients.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. So both Neil and Bill are actually going to be speakers at our upcoming advisor conference, which we're holding in January of 2025 in Puerto Rico. We're so excited for this because this is going to be some of the absolute fastest growing advisors who are currently on the Bill Good Marketing system. They're all going to be showing and sharing the little things that they do that have yielded big results in terms of doubling their business, freeing up their time, helping them achieve their business goals. There's probably over 5 billion in the room at this conference, and they are some of the sharpest minds that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting and working with. And we cannot wait for this conference and specifically to hear what Bill and Neil are going to be sharing. But there's so much that Bill and Neil both could be sharing. We can't fit it all into one conference. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this webinar today to discuss something, as you've heard, is a critical part of both their backgrounds. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about AdvisorCon towards the end of the webinar, but that is definitely something I want you all to keep in mind. If you're interested in growing your business, you're interested in learning what's working right now, this is the conference to attend, and we can't wait to hold it in January. Now let's start diving into the webinar. A couple of moments or a couple of notices of housekeeping that I want to go through really quickly. First of all, we love questions. If you have any questions for Neil or for Bill at any time, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll be monitoring them and I'll be feeding them to Bill and Neil as we go along. And then, as always, if you've ever been on one of these webinars before, you know that we always like to give a thank you to all of you for giving us an hour of your time today. So we do that by providing you with a special goodie bag. And this contains several resources that you can use and apply to your own seminars. We have a really dynamite goodie bag today. First of all, we have what's called the Seminar Success Zone. Now, this is an ebook that Bill himself wrote that contains a lot of information on the 6 most important factors that determine the success of a financial services seminar. It is chock full of information on how you can up your seminar game. And then we also have 2 resources that Neil has provided. One is Neil's own seminar checklist. This contains some of the things that he learned from Bill and then tweaked himself to ensure that he's putting on a great show. And then Neil has also shared with us his seminar report card. And as you'll see as we go along, that plays a big role in actually turning seminar attendees into prospects who are requesting appointments with you. So I'll show you how to get that goodie bag at the end of this webinar. So stick around for that, and we'll give that to you, and you can use that any way that you want to. All right, let's dive into the topic of seminars. As you know, today Neil is going to share 5 small but critical tweaks that he made that enabled him to turn seminars into something that didn't give him much return on investment to something that gave him a big return on investment. But before we get into that, it's critical that you understand why small tweaks can make such a big difference, especially with seminars. There are certain seminar factors that you must get into a specific zone in order to achieve seminar success. So I'm going to turn the time over to Bill here so he can talk with you about these different factors and how tweaking them can increase the profit and revenue with your seminars. So Bill, without further ado, please take it away.
All right. So what you're looking at on the left-hand side of the slide, ladies and gentlemen, are what I call the success zone factors. These factors together make up the return you get on a seminar. And as I go through them, I'm going to ask Neil to comment on some of the differences that he has over the numbers you see right now. So I'm going to define each one of these, and I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if you can control all of these statistics, you will have a seminar money machine. If one of these statistics is out of the zone, you'll work harder. If two of these are out of the zone, mathematically, you're broke. That's the hard news, okay? Now, the first seminar factor, or the first success factor that we have to master, is getting a decent acceptance rate. Now, what do I mean by acceptance rate? If you send out 1,000 invitations, how many accept? That's the acceptance rate. Now, the numbers I've given you here are a break-even set of numbers. And I believe that even if you are not making a profit in year one, you should break even, because what you're buying as you invest in advisory accounts, what you're buying as you invest in advisory accounts is recurring income certificates, many of which will double and triple over their life, and they will last sometimes 20 or 30 years. That's what this is all about. So this invitation acceptance rate in the break-even model needs to be about 0.35%. Now, Neil, your invitation acceptance rate is much higher than that.
It is. We shoot for 1 to 1.5%.
All right. Big difference. And if you were to plug in the 1.5% number right there, you would see an immediate increase in the profitability of that seminar. Now, the second one is the show up rate. So if you have 50 people that sign up, what percentage show up? And this model says you need at least 90% of them. And that statistic is not hard to get with the kind of seminar processing routine that we have. You need to get them to respond. You need to confirm them. You need to call them. You need to find out sometimes what their menu choices are, and you need to get them there. So that's not terribly hard to get. Now, this next one, the appointment request rate. One of the things in your goodie bag is Neil's post-seminar report card. That report card drives appointments. And if you know how to present it, if you remind people to fill it out, you will find that they will actually check off a box that reads something like, yes, I'd like a free 1-hour appointment. There's no question about that. And what we know is if you are getting at least 30% request rate, your seminar is decent. If you're getting 50%, that's professional grade. And Neil, your appointment request rate over time was what?
Right at 50%, probably right in that ballpark.
Okay. All right. Now you have the appointment set rate. Let's just say that you get a 30% and you have 10 people who say, yes, I want an appointment. For this model to work, you have to get 100% of those to show up to set the appointment, and then 100% of them to show up. Now, the interesting thing is some people will fill, when they fill out your report card, will say, yes, I want an appointment. They'll never take your call.
Mm-hmm.
Other people who did not want one will, when you call to set an appointment, oh, I'm glad you called, and they'll set an appointment. So we call everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But we start with the people who said, yes, I want an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now comes the point where the rubber meets the road. If you have a 100, and we deal in terms of 3 months to get accounts open. And okay, selling skills is 30% will close. And by 30% of what? 30% of the people who set and keep the first appointment. All right. And if you get that, you can break even. Professional grade is 40 or 50%. The top salespeople close better than 50%. Your 120-day close rate, Neil, is roughly what?
Probably 50 to 60. I mean, we try to identify the people that we really want, and we really try to go through the process to close them, whether it's increased contact or specialized contact. So of the people that we want to get, we probably get 60%, I would say.
Okay. Now, that last little statistic, a 2-year close rate. This involves a process of staying in touch with the people who attended your seminar and who did not set appointments, who may have not taken a phone call. And what's your 2-year close rate?
We're probably about 10% over time.
Okay.
We have one prospect right now that we met with last week, who's a $5 million prospect. The initial seminar was 2019. So it's been 5 years of kind of contact and building trust over time. And they finally have a reason. They finally have a reason to come in. They're looking at retirement and they need a plan. So they knew that the go-to people for that, and they were just waiting. They've been on the sidelines in cash for a really long time, and they wanted a second opinion, but they weren't ready 5 years ago. But they're ready now. So we have a good shot at them.
And that's staying in touch. All right. Now, let's change one of these variables. And let's say that our invitation acceptance rate goes from 0.35 to 0.5%. So Matthew, you want to go to that next slide? And here's what that does. We've gone from break even to making some money, paying all of our expenses, and we made a modest profit by increasing the invitation acceptance rate. Now, when you get your copy of that book that I wrote, the Seminar Success Sum, you will see how we can handle increasing that acceptance rate. There are different tools that are outlined. So if you don't have a good acceptance rate, you need to have that book available so you can work your way up the chart, so to speak. Now, if we also increase the appointment request rate, let's show them that, Matthew, from 30% to 40%. We're starting to make a little bit of money on, and this model, by the way, assumes you're going to do 2 events with 1 mailing. And in the background in the Excel spreadsheet that produces all this numbers, I've set 8,900 invitations to do that. And as Neil might tell you later, he doesn't send that many because he gets a much higher percentage. Okay. Yeah. Now, the appointment request rate is a key indicator of the quality of your presentation. If you tell me, Bill, I only had 20% of the people request an appointment, I know one of several things is true. You're using too many slides. You have a bad presentation. The room is set up wrong. It's too hot. It's too cold. There's all kinds of things that can do that. Excuse me, that can do that. All right. So now let's increase our closing rate with the 120%, 120-day close rate. All right. So we've got that up to 40%. Now these two seminars have made $17,000. And if we do all of our follow-up material, and Neil is going to talk to you a little bit about that later, and if we get 10% of the people who attended the seminar and have not bought yet, that has a dramatic effect on the revenue and the profitability of those 2 seminars. So let's do that last little piece, Matthew. All right, so now you're making some serious money on the $10,000, $12,000 it costs to put on those 2 seminars. All right, so Matthew, back over to you. That's what those statistics I went over with you are fully explained in the book, The Seminar Success Sum.
That's amazing, Bill. Thank you. We have a couple questions. One question for you, Bill, is what's the target investable assets for the audience? in your scenario?
The thing I plugged into my spreadsheet, I said, let's go for a $500,000 average new account. Some will be bigger, some might be smaller, but that's what we're looking for.
And then you answered this in chat, Neil, but why don't you tell everyone here what your target would be?
So this was a bit of a process that we dialed this in a little bit. Before, we were getting a lot of prospects that were not qualified. So we increased the minimum to 750, and by the end, we did increase the minimum by $1 million to $1 million. We had less people to send invitations to, so we had to increase our invitation acceptance rate more to get people in the seats. That's why we shot for we were even shooting for like a 2% invitation acceptance rate at one point in time, because we were increasing that minimum. We wanted to get more quality people in the room as opposed to just volume. We would do a seminar with 15 people. We would do a seminar with 10 people, if it got to that point.
Excellent. We also have another question from Ruben. How did you find a lead source for qualified prospects?
Yeah, at the time we used Leading Response. They were a great partner for a really long time. I don't know if they're available now, but they did a very good job at giving us qualified prospects. They were a great partner. But any type of list we could use. We were using other lists too, of any qualified prospect list you could use for the mailing.
And Bill, I know list development and list procurement is something that you have thought a lot about over the years. Do you have any insights here in terms of Ruben's question, finding a good lead source for qualified prospects?
I have recommended for a long time that people contract with Leading Response to do their invitations. They have done this for 20 years. They have 500,000 seminars in their database, and they can even tell you which restaurant to use and which one to stay away from when you use their service, which I just consider that to be an invaluable piece of information. And I see another question on, is Leading Response available in Canada? Nigel, I don't think so. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here. If you guys want to talk to somebody at Leading Response, she happens to be on the seminar right now. Her name is Lisa Halava, Hlava. And when you call Leading Response, ask for Lisa, and she's the person that I personally refer people to because she does a great job.
And then speaking of Canada, John asks, do you have a specific Canadian option for a lead source, Bill?
Canada has issues with releasing private information. There is or used to be a database called Reference Canada. And you can do that. You can also go to Canada Post. And we have several Canadian clients who've done work with Canada Post. And that's the best you can do as far as I know in Canada. It's tougher there.
Great, thank you. Okay, so, Bill, you've been talking about, and giving examples of how tweaking these different factors can have a dramatic impact on your profitability. So now I want to get into some of the tweaks that Neil made in these different areas that led to a dramatic increase in his own profitability. Neil, what I wanted to ask you first, though, was when you first started doing seminars, you mentioned how you made a lot of mistakes. One of the things you told me that in many of your events, your return on investment was initially extremely low. There were some events where you essentially got nothing out of it at all. Mm-hmm. So I actually wanted to start by establishing a baseline a little bit and ask you to describe what your original round of seminars pre-tweaking looked like, even to the horror stories that you might have experienced and the lessons you learned from them.
Yeah, it was a process. So yeah, thanks, Matt. It's we had a lot of misses and a lot of bad seminars to start. So one of the worst ones was probably we contracted with a friend of ours, their restaurant, and it was in the middle of the summer. It was like 90 degrees outside, and their AC broke. So we had 20 people in a U-shaped table, having dinner. And I'm clicking through 30 different slides, boring them to death, and they are sweating as much as they possibly can, and they just want to get out of the room. And but we didn't pre-qualify the space. We didn't look at the space beforehand. We didn't know the HVAC was done. We did none of the pre-work to get the seminar in the right space. Fortunately, we got one client out of that seminar. I think that person, great people we work with today, I think they just felt bad for us, about how terrible the seminar was. But that was one of the worst ones where it was just a mess. So over time, and to be fair, I was not a great public speaker at the time. It took me a long time to dial this in. To the start, we did like a funny video, and then we went through 30 to 40 slides. Again, boring the audience to tears. It would go 3 hours, and we would lose people. We made every mistake in the book. We sent them canned invitations and got 0 response rates. We've done that. We've spent money for mailings, $2,000 for a mailing, and got no one. It's just every single problem that you've probably experienced with seminars, we've probably gone through at some point. Fortunately, we were able to troubleshoot a lot of it with Bill.
And I want to ask you about that too, because one of the things that Bill has always said, I remember one of the first things I ever learned from him was that advisors tend to make one of 2 mistakes. One, they have a good idea and then they abandon it. And 2, they have a bad idea and they stick with it.
Okay.
So I'm curious what the impetus was for you to sort of make you realize, you know what, I may have a bad idea here. I need to change something that led you to start working with Bill and really start thinking, okay, I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel. I'm going to do this by the book. What was that moment for you?
To be fair, Matt, I had a moment where we were going to give up, really. It was like we were going to throw in the towel at one point. We probably did 5 seminars and I got maybe 1 prospect out of 5 seminars. And I was like, we're spending too much money. This is just not working out. Like, people don't like me. Like, this stinks. And then Bill got us through. He's like, Bill, Neil, just tweak these couple things, focus on these specific items. And fortunately, the next seminar, we were able to close like 3 or 4 people, and it got the wheels spinning again. But we went through a very big slump in the start. Probably was, when I say 5 or 6 seminars and they were dry. We probably got no one for 5 and 6 seminars to start. I think because we just made too many mistakes. We didn't know what we were doing wrong. So we were kind of banging our head against the wall. And then Bill said, started to tweak, little things, and it slowly but surely we got better and better. And we've probably done 90 seminars, over this time. So it took us a long time to perfect the process. The first 5 seminars were literally throwaways. Maybe even the first 7 to 10. It took us a long time to get really ramped up.
So let's dive into some of those tweaks. When you and I spoke a few weeks ago, I asked you what were the single most important tweaks you made, and you gave me a list of them, and I want to go through each one. The first one that you talked to me about was choosing the right topic for your presentation, because this is what you're promoting as well, in your invitation to help you get to that 1%, rate that you've been doing, or even a 0.5% that Bill talked about. And this is one of the most common questions we get here at Bill Good Marketing is what's working now? What should I be talking about? So tell me what the process has been for you with choosing the right topic and what you have found to work.
This is a fun one because we really didn't get this right for a while. And if you think about what your clients want to talk about, they want to talk about current events. They want to talk about the election. They want to talk about interest rates. They want to talk about AI stocks. They want to talk about NVIDIA. They want to talk about, so whatever your clients want to talk about, when they call, is what we started to put into the seminars. So when we were doing Social Security seminars or blanket financial planning seminars, our acceptance rate or, our show up rate was maybe, half of 1%. We would use the typical seminar. In the past, we were using the seminar with the, the stake on the top. It's the canned seminar, not the canned invitation, but the standard invitation with some Social Security invite. We decided we needed to differentiate ourselves. So we went straight after current events. So if we would have to do an event right now, it would be on AI stocks. It would be on AI stocks and the Fed lowering rates. And maybe I would do the election, maybe not. That's so politically charged. I probably would avoid it, just because the seminar can get a little spicy, when you start talking about political events. but I would talk about what people want to talk about, the stock market going up, recently, the recent run of the markets. And we shifted to wedding style invitations. So a little bit more expensive, but professional style invitations that when delivered to the client, they feel like they're invited to something special. So and that was a Bill change. He says when someone picks up that invitation, they want to know that this is a special event specifically targeted for them. It's not from you don't want to make them feel like it's coming from a mailing. That's not the goal. It's I know you, I know that you've seen the video go up, 150%, and I want to talk about it. And I want to talk about it with you. So that's how we really dialed in our initial, 1.5 to 2% acceptance rate. That was a big change. And then the way we approached our seminar is we would do a Socratic opening. So eventually I got to the point where I did no slides at all. There was no canned slides. And Bill, I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun here a little bit. But this is a really important process with Bill. But I would ask the audiences, what's on top of mind for you? And they would tell me, and I would put it on a whiteboard or I would write it down. And I would make sure that those things are talked about during the presentation. It might be estate planning. It might be tax rates changing. It might be specific stocks, income in retirement. And then we would make sure we would hit those topics for those people.
All right. I want to butt in right here and just call attention to what Neil is really doing. He is really building his brand as expert financial advisor. He can take on any of the topics people want to talk about. He doesn't have to have slides that bore people to death. And because they came to evaluate him, not the slide maker. Mm-hmm. And I can remember early on in our relationship getting Neil to cut maybe from 15 slides to 10 and then to 5. And then you were the one, Neil, who told me one day I didn't do any slides.
Yeah, 0 slides.
And that was a major change that, I can't imagine you standing up in front of a group of investors with even one slide now.
It almost, you can feel it in the presentation. When you start to go to the slides, you start to lose the audience. If you can engage the people in the crowd or on the tables, and that's why we try to limit the tables or the people to 30 people. More than 30, I find it hard to kind of capture their attention. But if I'm using a slide as a crutch, then it almost feels like I don't know the material. So I kind of have my bullet points for each topic, written out ahead of time. So I know how to steer the conversations. I'm not going to go anything off of left field. If it is left field, I try to dial it back to what I know. But I have my bullet points and my scripts for each topic. Retirement income, AI stocks, whatever it is. I have the set points that I know I want to go through with each individual question.
Now we have some good questions coming in that I want to make sure we get to, Neil, that I think have to do, with getting the audience to show up in the first place. First off, John asks, do you host the dinner or do attendees pay all or a portion of it?
So we do host the dinner. So we do pay for the entire dinner, entire presentation, entire dinner. That's covered by us.
I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the show aspect of it in just a moment. John also asks, you're talking about, current events, what's on people's minds. And he wants to know, isn't talking about specific stocks or sectors, do you not find that attracts more of a DIY audience than maybe you really wanted?
That's a great question. Yes, very much so it does. So people want to talk about how they invested in NVIDIA 5 years ago, and they're brilliant, right? Everyone wants to talk about that. So you get these investors who I have a Fidelity account or I have a Vanguard account, and I've done so well with my accounts. What I try to do in those conversations is I try to spin it, right? I say, oh, that's fantastic. What are you going to do now? What's the plan? Mm-hmm. Now that you've done well with NVIDIA, do you have a plan on how to sell it? I was like, how are you going to generate retirement income? Is that the goal? How are you going to generate retirement income off of your NVIDIA stock? And they don't have an answer, right? They don't know. But we do, right? As advisors, that's our job. So what I try to do is try to take their questions or whatever their interest is and validate what they said. Fantastic job. It's great to hear that you nailed the NVIDIA trade, but what's next for you, right? How are you going to do it again? Or what's are you going to give this stock to your kids? Is it enough to start giving to charity? Do you want to pay these capital gains? So then that's where we start to develop a really robust conversation in the seminar. And it gets other people's minds thinking. It's like, oh, wow, I do have appreciated stock too. Maybe that donor advised fund does make some sense. Or I should be gifting money, or I should be using, a charitable contribution from my IRA, because this NVIDIA stock has gone up so much. So I don't know if it's deflecting or just kind of steering the conversation, but whatever comes at me, it's engagement. And then I try to steer it to what we do well, right? That's my goal. My goal is to kind of demonstrate that whatever question or comment that you have, we can steer it to help you and enhance what you already have.
And Neil, I think that's a great segue into the second tweak that you told me about that Bill really steered you on to in the beginning. And that's, you're not there to sell a service, you're there to sell the advisor. And I think, everyone who does seminars, they have a wariness of, the plate licker or the DIY person who has no intention of doing business with you. But I think you've sort of gotten around that a bit. And you've already alluded to this a little bit too, in that your whole ethos is, I'm not selling a product, I'm not selling a service, I'm selling me, and I'm selling the team. So talk a bit about what that means and how that's affected you.
And this is part that we got wrong for a really long time. So we have a dividend paying stock model, probably like everyone else. We have a growth model, a ETF model. We do a financial plan. So for a long time, I would sell those things. I would sell our dividend paying stocks. I would sell our growth model. I would sell our financial planning process. And the return rate or the acceptance rate for a meeting was much lower. It was really low. It was maybe 20, well, 30%. The shift was, Bill said, Neil, you need to sell yourself. It's like, you just need to sell the appointment with the advisor. And that was a bit of a shift, in terms of how we presented and how we closed the business at the end. And we just basically leaned into, we're the expert to help you handle your financial life now and into the future. You have no idea what's going to happen into the future, but we're extremely capable and we have a deep team to help you with whatever challenge comes next. And that was a big shift. And again, I think it makes people feel like you have a more customized approach. And that resonated with people a lot more than saying, come in and do a financial plan. It was, no, I'm going to help your family with your specific issue that we're going to talk about in our meeting.
I love that. We have a lot of good questions coming in. I'm going to save some of these to for the Q&A portion at the end of this webinar, because I want to make sure we get through the various things you've been doing, Neil. And I think the next one is super important too, because you can have a great topic, you can have a great invitation, you can have good presentation skills, but there is a show management component to seminars. I think, Bill, you've called it seminar, magic in the past. And that's, the actual staging of the seminar. And you've done a number of tweaks here that Bill has worked with you on. So you can see them on the screen in front of you, but let's go through each of these and talk to us a little bit about those.
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate that I have a team. So we work as a 3-person team. It's Claire Carberry, Kyle Rafina, and myself. And I'm responsible for the presentation, and I'm responsible for working on closing the business. They're responsible for the setup, all the seminar magic that you talk about, they're responsible for, and they leaned into that process heavily. So when we walk in, Claire has set up the room. Everything's perfect. We only use circle tables. It's 6 people to a table. It's always that structure. Each member of the team is at one of the tables to try to engage the prospects ahead of time and during the presentation. We always are on time. It's only a 2-hour seminar. It's 1 hour for dinner, and then it's 45 minutes for the presentation and 15 minutes for question and answer. And we got it to the point where it was down to the minute. And so I'm only worried about engaging the audience and making sure that my presentation is strong. Claire's in the background, and she's making sure the support staff and the wait staff is on time. If they're late on the on the entrees, she's up, she's moving them along. Kyle's there, he's bouncing around from table to table, engaging the rest of the audience, right? During the dinner. That was real. To have a team was critical. I don't think that you could do this on your own. I just don't think you can engage enough people at a seminar by doing just a one-person seminar. You need the support staff. I think at least 2 people, maybe even 3 could work. But we have 2 amazing people who have perfected the magic part. Claire and Kyle both developed a marketing placemat. So literally, it was a placemat that was on underneath all of the silverware and the plates. So when they sat down, they would look at the placemat and they would know a lot about our team. Even before we spoke, they would know who we are, where we're from, what we specialize in. So everything was customized to that dinner. We tried to elevate everything to another level to make it high net worth, maybe even try ultra high net worth if we could, in terms of the professionalism of the setup and the marketing materials, and then just the structure in general. So the structure got really tight. We only worked with certain restaurants. That was a big one. So there's certain restaurants that are not good at this. You have to find a good partner. And once you find a good partner, I would just lean into it as much as possible. I mean, because they love working with you. You're giving them great business. The wait staff is really dedicated if you go back a couple times. And then it's interesting, the wait staff starts to know the process. So they know Tuesday, Thursday, you're there. They know it's an hour. They know it's an hour dinner. They know the timing of all the meals. And that does make a difference. There's no, everything runs really smooth. And I give Claire and Kyle all the credit in the world for doing that. I mean, they basically manage the magic of the seminar.
That's fantastic. We have a couple questions about the presentation and the structure of the room. One, John wants some clarification that you do not speak while people are eating, correct?
Correct. That was critical. So we eat dinner. So say seminar starts the seminar starts at 6:30. 6:30 to 7:30 is dinner, and that's it. We eat. Each of us are at a different circle table. We're engaging with the people at that table. We're getting to know them. In our back of our mind, we're basically, I don't want to say profiling, but we're basically gathering information about them along the way. So by the end of the seminar, we know who's a hot prospect and maybe who's not. But yes, we do not present during the meal. The meal and the presentation are separate.
Excellent. Bill, do you want to add anything that you want to add on any of these factors and how they, contribute to the appointment request rate that you talked about earlier?
Yeah, just as a matter, I learned a long time ago, never, ever, ever speak while they're eating. And I won't do that. If I'm invited to be a presenter and they've got me when people are talking, I won't do it. We've got to change something right away. And the other thing is, the U-shaped table is death to a speaker. Not just bad, it's awful. And I have walked into a room where I'm going to be a speaker and I see a U-shaped table and I call the banquet manager or the maitre d' or somebody and we rearrange the seating right on the spot. U-shaped tables are the worst. And by the way, this is on the checklist, the seminar setup checklist that you'll get when you get our goodie bag.
Absolutely. So the next week, Neil, and you've alluded to this a little bit already with marketing materials, giving the audience something to take home, I think is really, really critical, and it contributes to the show up rate, for people who've requested an appointment actually showing up to that appointment or taking your call, like Bill mentioned earlier. So tell us a bit about some of the marketing materials and take home materials that you guys use.
Yeah, so typically we'll do some more information about the team as a whole. We're fortunate we have a 12-person team. So we have, a pretty good group, 6 advisors, 6 support staff. So we'll highlight a little bit more about the team as a whole, and go through the history of the team. So there's a team history in the packet. There's also individual bios for Kyle, Claire, and myself. So they get to know who we are individually. And then usually we have some type of topical piece in there, whether it's, quarterly commentary that we wrote. Usually it's something that we try to write, as opposed to something like that we work with Wells Fargo, that Wells Fargo wrote, or something that's really top of mind. Maybe it is a interest rate piece or income and retirement piece or something like that, just to kind of give them something to take home. But that is usually it's more information about our team, and kind of our process and what we do. That was a big one. So we did have a process sheet. So very distinct process of how we work with clients. So we, at the end, we would offer a no cost, no obligation meeting and investment financial plan. So that was our sale. All that I wanted to do was get them in the office. That was the only thing I wanted to do. So we would take away, we would have a process sheet. And it says the process is a first meeting, it's data gathering. Then we would go back to our analysis, and the second meeting would be, kind of a presentation, and then we would go through the rest of how we would potentially invest and manage the assets. So we did have a process sheet in there about how we work with clients.
Awesome. Bill, any other thoughts from you on marketing materials and take home?
No, he's covered it well.
Excellent. So the last week I want to make sure we cover, Neil, and this is probably my favorite. You talked about, and Bill talked about, the 2-year close rate. And I think this is something that most advisors, they don't think about as part of the seminar, but it really is. The seminar, the campaign does not end when you go home, at the end of the event. It continues. And one of the things that you've had great success with is getting people who attended but didn't initially request an appointment to request one months, sometimes years down the road. You mentioned a 5-year one earlier today. So talk a little bit about your process at turning these ghost prospects, if you will, into reactivated prospects down the road. How do you stay in touch and keep them engaged?
Yeah, that's a good question. We find that I got really frustrated to start with the close rate. And then I kind of took a step back, and a lot of times these people are just not ready. Whether they don't have the event yet or they are kind of still thinking about the process. I never really try to push that hard in terms of the close. Like, I never want to force someone to make a decision. So if they're ready, right? Like, every once in a while you run into a prospect from a seminar, and they literally, before the presentation or the dinner starts, they're asking you where to sign the ACAT paperwork. We've had that a couple times. That's, a handful of times. But oftentimes they're trying to evaluate who to work with forever. They're going to make this change one more time, and they want to have confidence that they're making the right call. So we've kind of taken a bit of a step back and said, okay, it might take 1 meeting, 2 meetings. And then what we try to do is give them topical touch bases. So the goal from the report card, which has an intake about what their interests are, as well as their net worth and income, or mostly net worth. But we're going to send them topical emails and touch points and follow-up calls. So someone is interested in retirement income, and there's something going on about in the markets that is topical to them. I'm going to try to give them a call and just say, just to let you know, this is happening. This is something that we would do in your portfolio if we were working together. I think this could be a good fit based on our last conversation. Just wanted to share this idea with you. And that's it. And then you just try to engage them and say, how's your family? How's everything? How's things been? Try to establish a personal relationship. But we found, especially with these higher net worth prospects, and they do come to seminars, they have a little bit longer lead time. Our biggest win was a $40 million account. It was $10 million investable, and then he brought in all his kids. So it was ended up being like $17 million investable, and it's probably $40 million total net worth. But we probably had to go through 7 meetings very patiently. Took about 1.5 years to close. He was always engaged, always picked up the phone, gave him some information about the markets, what we're buying, what we're looking at, what we think about, current market, current environments, financial planning ideas. just touch base. And eventually he just said, yeah, I'm ready. So, but it took about a year and a half. I mean, that was the biggest close that we had. It took a little bit of time.
That's wonderful. Bill, do you have any additional thoughts or strategies that you think advisors should know about in terms of staying in contact with attendees?
You just do what Neil said. And a key thing is what they check off on the questionnaire.
Mm.
If somebody says, I'm interested in apples, don't talk about pears and bananas.
One thing I'd like to add just very briefly, Neil, you mentioned that you will send, emails and touch points and things like that. I think a extremely powerful tool for turning seminar attendees into clients down the road is your monthly drip. And when we talk about your monthly drip, I strongly recommend that you include physical letters as well as emails in that. Letters on what's going on in the markets, letters for key holidays, letters for various other financial topics that are important that maybe they indicated on the report card. When you send physical letters throughout the year to your prospects, that is so powerful in terms of maintaining top of mind awareness, in terms of showing that you are an expert advisor, in terms of demonstrating that you are a trustworthy, caring individual, and demonstrating that you're a good citizen. And if you could hit all those different aspects of your brand, establish all those identities in the minds of your prospects, you will start becoming their financial advisor in their mind even before they've come in to sign the paperwork with you. And I know of no other tool better than a monthly drip that involves physical letters. And of course, that's something that we do every single week here at Bill Good Marketing, is provide messages and letters and other forms of content that you can use to stay in front of your prospects. So that's my pitch. But those are the 5 tweaks. Neil, thank you so much for sharing that. We have a lot of questions I want to get to. So let's go through some of those right now. We have a question from Gabby, who asks, is it better to present and then have dinner, or have dinner first and then present?
Good question, Gabby. So we found that I want them to be full, and then I want them to have a lot of caffeine right afterwards. So ideally, they're eating and then they all have coffee. And once they have coffee, we're going. That's the goal. So I don't want them to be hungry at that point. I want them to be really comfortable. Usually the dinner calms them down. And then once they have their coffee, I'm going through my Socratic opening, asking them what's top of mind, trying to engage them, and we're on. Yeah, so dinner first.
Another question that we have is from John, and he asks, do you have name tags or dinner place nameplates?
Good question. John, great question. So we've played around with this. We do have name tags. We've done that before. We've also tried the name tags on each individual table, which I think can work. We never perfected that, John. But if you know who your hot prospects are ahead of time, like if you have 30 people in the room and you know for a fact 15 are throwaways and 15 are hot, then you want to put all 15 hot prospects at the same 2 tables. You want to put them in the right spot. So if you have a bit of knowledge about your leads ahead of time, yes, I would totally try to pair them up at specific tables with different people. That's one thing we did do. We did invite current clients to seminars every once in a while, and then we would basically plant them at a table with our prospect. So we would pair them and say, this guy's a hot prospect. I know he's a good guy. We want to work with him. Please sit with our client. So we would do that.
Great. Bill, we have a question for you from Michael. He wants to know if Marcia Glasser at CIS is still in business.
She will do specialized lists for certain people. As far as I know, and I've known Marcia since 1979, that was even a few years before Noah's flood. She will do certain specialized lists, but she's essentially retired.
Great. We have a question, I think for both of you, from Pat. Pat says, we are charging $50 for our upcoming seminar with a military guest speaker around election time. Considering donating a portion of ticket cost to a veterans charity and making that known on the invite. Do you guys have any thoughts or recommendations on that idea? Let's start with you, Bill.
I'm not familiar with any successful seminar program that charges money to attend.
Mhm.
I wouldn't do it if at all possible.
I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but I think having that idea of a military guest speaker, and then inviting attendees to donate for a veterans charity would make a terrific client event. Would you agree?
It would make a terrific client event. I don't think it would make a good prospecting event.
Gotcha. Okay, so
well, let me just add one more thing.
Yeah.
It could work. I just don't know of anybody that's tried it. I don't know of any success at charging for seminars. And it just does not, I wouldn't do it. So there you go.
It just as a follow-up to the one thing that we did do is we had systematic client events, and then we take the prospects from the seminars, and then we would invite them to the client events. So once we had a hot prospect and we knew they were close to closing, we would invite them to the military speaker about the elections. We would make sure that once they come to the seminar, it says, this is what it's like to be a client of ours. This is our client experience. Please come. And then they would go, if we got them into a client seminar, if we got a prospect into a client seminar, the close rate was really high, really high. It was really hard for them to say no at that point.
We have more questions I want to get to, but I'm also conscious of the time, and I want to make sure people get access to the goodie bag. So I'm going to pivot to that really quick, and then we'll go back to questions. So again, if you missed what we talked about earlier, we have a goodie bag as a way of saying thank you, and it contains several resources that you can use to improve your own seminars. It contains the Seminar Success Zone, which is all the information you need to get those factors that Bill talked about into the zone that makes your seminars increasingly profitable. And then we also have a copy of Neil's seminar checklist for ensuring a high quality production, and then a copy of his report card, which can really help you increase your appointment request rate. So you can get those goodies. All we ask that you do is just fill out a quick report card of our own, a little survey letting us know how we did, what you learned, what you'd like to see from us in the future. And then as soon as you fill that out, it takes about 60 seconds, it'll take you immediately to the goodie bag itself. So to fill out that report card and get your goodies, just go to bgmtips.com/proven. You can see that on your screen, or feel free to scan the QR code. And we've also posted the link in the chat. So feel free to get those goodies anytime you like after you fill out the report card. If you have to leave us now, thank you so much for joining us today. If you guys can hang on for a few minutes, I'm going to go through a few more questions for Neil and Bill, if that's okay with you guys.
That was great.
Great. So Neil, Kevin has a question for you. He asks, do you ever do virtual seminars like over Zoom or something similar?
We did. During COVID, we did, and we tried everything. So we did, gosh, that was a learning experience. So during COVID, we did virtual seminars, and then we would send people a like wine and cheese set for the seminar, or like, I don't even know if we actually did alcohol, but we definitely sent them something just to try to engage them. We had limited success, to be quite honest. We had a couple people. The way I've seen the webinars working is if you've already established a personal relationship with them physically, and the webinar is an additive. So if you're doing an investment commentary and it's a 30-minute investment commentary via webinar, and you invite that prospect to that webinar and to talk about current investment events, that worked. That pushed that ghost prospect along on the spectrum. But fresh people, it is really, we weren't able to do it. I mean, I'm sure it's possible. But we had limited success.
Gotcha. Speaking of ghost prospects, Steve asks, do you contact ghost prospects more frequently than monthly?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. I mean, some of them are every week. I mean, if they're engaged and they want more material. So my rule of thumb is always be adding. So if I can add value to the conversation, I'm going to push the envelope. So I'm going to continue to push the envelope and continue to add value to that conversation. So that's the goal. So if I can contact them every week, on a regular basis, I'm going to do that. So if they want the follow-up and they want to stay engaged, I'll talk to you every day. I'll talk to you every day if you want to.
Terrific. Then two more questions I want to get to really quick. John asks, which is better, dinner or lunch? And then also, what's your thought on breakfast or Saturday morning or presentations? Either of you guys have any takes on that?
I have seen some successful Saturday morning seminars.
Mm.
I have not seen any successful luncheon or breakfast seminars, except for a Saturday morning. There seems to be a social contract that if you want my time as an investor, buy me dinner at a restaurant I'd like to go to anyway. Food sells.
Great
A
answer.
sandwich at lunch does not.
I love that. And then the last question I want to get to you, Neil. Nigel asks if you can share one more time some of the seminar topics that you've done in the past that you felt were especially helpful at attracting high net worth investors.
Yeah, good question. We had a pretty successful run with estate planning, which is interesting. That was a hot topic for a while. I think people just don't know a whole lot about that, and they're always interested. So people don't know how trusts work, revocable versus irrevocable. When I give money to my kids, do I pay taxes? Some of these things are basic for us, but for clients, they just don't know. So, and it's interesting. It kind of ranges across the wealth spectrum. Everyone's interested in it. So that was successful. So anything with estate planning topics was really good. Retirement income, gosh, that is probably the number one for me. Retirement income, how to create an income source in retirement, how to make your money last in retirement. That's a huge one. And that applies to everyone, business owners, high net worth individuals, foundations, endowments. They all want that same type of conversation. Those are two big ones. The last one is probably something with current events. So we talked about low CD rates for a long time and how to get alternatives to CDs when rates were low. When rates were high, we were talking about different high yielding alternatives. So income, I think sells too. Income really sells. That's a big one. People like the tangible nature of income. And then I know there's some guys who are really good at Social Security. I'm not one of them. I'm just good enough to talk about it. There's some people who are really good at long-term care, like lights out. And I know that sells too. Like Kyle, who's on our team, is very well versed in both topics. He can speak very clearly and effectively on those two, but I know those two sell as well.
Terrific. Now I want to close out by talking really quick about AdvisorCon again, because if you got something from what you learned from Bill and from Neil today, you're going to get a whole lot more if you attend our advisor conference in January. And Bill, I know this is something near and dear to your heart because this is something you started decades ago and we've been doing every year ever since. So I was hoping you could talk to us really quick about what AdvisorCon is and why it's such a powerful thing for advisors to attend.
In January 1986, which I believe was just after Noah's flood, I held the first annual conference on guerrilla marketing. And I completely broke the mold of advisor conferences. What happened then, what happens now, is the broker dealers invite their wholesalers to come and make a presentation, and they'll throw in a few advisors as well. All of the speakers at that conference were advisors. All of the speakers at every conference we've done, and who knows how many it is, maybe it's 60 or 70. And over the years, what we learned is about half of the knowledge that you get from attending a conference, you'll get from one of the presenters. But the other half you get from people that you meet, just like you, and you have a conversation. And you come to our cocktail party, and there'll be little tables of people that are doing the same kind of thing. And it's a spontaneous thing that just comes together. And so the magic, Neil talked a little bit about seminar magic. Let's talk about conference magic. And the magic of a conference is the speakers, it's the venue, it's the allowance for a time between events so that people can talk. And there's just, quite frankly, there's nothing like it. We've got clients who have been to every single one of them since early 90s, at least. So there you have it.
Yeah, and Bill mentioned we have an amazing venue this year. We're in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We're right off the beach. It's incredible. And then the speaker lineup is, in my opinion, unparalleled. Neil will be talking about some of the things he's been doing to attract ultra high net worth business owners. Some really exciting things there. We have speakers who will be talking about how they're getting more referrals than ever before. We'll have a speaker there talking about how, despite the fact that she had recently had a baby, she has been attracting more high net worth prospects than ever, and the tweaks she made to her business model that enabled her to do that. Kathy Hobart will be talking about how to prospect all the way up and down the family tree and how to sell prospects and turn them into clients, even when you're in your hospital bed, which is something she recently just did, which is absolutely incredible. We'll be talking about building your team so that they can be growing your business for you. If you need to take a leave of absence, we'll be talking about growing using social media, centers of influence, and strategic partnerships. Almost anything you can imagine, we have advisors sharing everything they've learned to achieve incredible success and the little things that they're doing to achieve that success. So please be sure to look into AdvisorCon. Our early bird special is ending very soon. It's at the end of this month. So if you're interested, please look into that. We'd love to chat with you about this conference, and you have a chance to see Neil and Bill in person. So one more time, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just want to tell people I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to talk about, but the title of my talk is New Roads, Better Sewers. So figure it out.
Excellent. So for those of you who are still with us, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you got a lot of good information out of this for your own seminars and your own prospecting, but we really appreciate you giving us some of your valuable time. I put up the report card link one more time so you can get your goodies. Make sure you get that. And then Bill, Neil, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your expertise and your wisdom. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for doing a great job, Matthew.
Thank you. So from all of us here at Bill Good Marketing, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, a great rest of your month, and we'll catch you on our next webinar. Until then, thank you very much.